Alright, what's up guys? This is Jose Shorty Torres and you're watching another episode of Inside Team Shorty, where I give the reality, the truth, and everything behind the scenes of the sport of MMA. I have ATT strength and conditioning coach Phil Daru here, which works with Joanna, Dustin Poirier, Tisha Torres. I mean, the list goes on and on. And the guy's critically acclaimed. He's been nominated for awards, and that's the whole different story. But and it's again, we have a couple strength and conditioning coaches here, but you so far are the main guy. I work with a lot of people, and I'm not going to ask the typical question of, hey, do you believe strength and conditioning is big for MMA? I think it's big for almost any sport you do, except for bowling, because
I don't know, man. Maybe bowling's making a run. Even curling has a strength and conditioning program, believe it or not. So
the funny thing is, my roommate was a bowler in college, and dude, he was like, I don't know why I'm running hill sprints, because our coach made us do all the sports had to do the same thing.
Oh shit!
Didn't matter. He just got lazy, so he's like, everyone's doing the same thing. So he's like, dude, why am I running hill sprints? I literally take 5 steps, throw a ball, and the biggest thing I pick up besides the ball is a big gulp. I was like,
I don't know the correlation between that.
Yeah. And so, Bowling Joe, I miss you. Anywho, so
shout out.
A fun thing for you, a lot of people don't know, is you actually had an MMA career. So what sports did you do growing up, and what made you eventually get into MMA?
Man, what sports haven't I done is the answer. Well, the whole thing would be, I would say, first off, I started with Kempo Karate. So that was a martial arts that I started back when I was like 3 years old. So I started with that, played baseball, basketball, but I ended up really taking to football and American football, and basically took that all the way up to college. Played Division I football for Alabama State University, played strong safety. Also, fun fact, in my high school career, I played with Jason Pierre-Paul, he played for the Giants now, he's the guy who blew off his hand. That guy, yeah. So, I mean, we had a good team in high school, and then obviously went to Alabama State to play there. After I was done with that career, then ended up getting into combat sports more, full-time, right? So I was boxing on the off-season, actually keeping it away from the NCAA, because obviously I would have got kicked out. So I made an alias name, and did a couple of amateur boxing matches with I think my name was Joe Smith or some white guy name or something like that. But ended up doing that for a little bit, and I was like, man, I gotta compete after I was done, playing in collegiate sports. So I was like, all right, what can I do? And Dean Thomas, actually, we sitting in the office right now. We share an office now, but started with Dean when I was about 20 years old.
The ATT gave Dean an office?
I know.
Thought this was yours.
I know. It looked like mine. I mean, we got T. Wood. Oh, there he goes. The young Dean Thomas right there. But
oh, man, I thought you just liked him. That's all.
Yeah, that was it. Signed photograph and everything. Yeah, but I started with him, and I rolled up to his gym. He had an ATT affiliated school out in Port St. Lucie, and started training with him. And, basically, I didn't really want to do any jiu-jitsu or anything like that. I really just wanted to box and kickbox. And that was kind of what I took, because, again, that background would be more stand-up in general. So I started doing that. He told me I had to get down to 155 pounds, which took me back a little bit, because I was weighing about 210 at the moment.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so then I came down here at Coconut Creek, and I seen Thiago Alves. You guys know who Thiago Alves is. And I seen that he cuts the 170, and I was fighting at 170 at the time. And I said, okay, well, maybe I do need to cut the 155, because that dude was big as shit. So, but yeah, so, trained that, did that for a while, was an amateur for about 6 months, turned pro. And at the same time, I was opening up my own gym. I was doing personal training here and there, picking people to Gold's Gym, sneaking them in. And I was also training my teammates. So I was doing, strength and conditioning for the people that I trained with. Then after that, went to, working towards getting my own facility, getting that going. At the age of 22, I opened up my own facility, which was good. Did the strength and conditioning for that, and grew it from an 800 square foot facility all the way up to 11,000 square feet. So we grew very quickly, and not so much to my benefit in a way, because things started to grow really fast, right? And I didn't have a business background. I'm kind of a meathead in a way, right? With a strength and conditioning, education, and so I had to learn on the fly. So from that perspective, I learned very well how to market myself and brand myself, and get people in and be personable, right? Communicate with people from all different walks of life, which helped me be a better coach too as well. So I would say that, and then after, by the age of 26, had to retire from the sport of MMA due to concussions. primarily from football, right? Had about 8 concussions altogether.
Good old CTE.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, man. And it was just about to make its rise. Like that movie came out with Will Smith and all that, and man, I was just like, this is crazy. So I went to the neurologist. We got checked out, and he said, man, if I don't stop by the time I'm 50, I'm gonna have Alzheimer's. So I called Dean and try to get his advice on it, because you're a fighter, you've done this all your life, or at least for a long amount of time, and you dedicated a lot of time towards it. It's hard to let it go, you know what I mean? So for me, I was kind of like on the fence about it still. And, he basically said, if it was your knee or like, your shoulder or something, then we can work around it, but it's your brain. You really don't want to mess with that. So, it took me a couple of days and I ended up retiring. And then at that point, I was like, well, now what do I do, right? So I started doing strongman competitions. I started doing powerlifting. I even did a bodybuilding competition. And all these methodologies of training, all these sports helped me become a better coach along with a better athlete. So I got to understand, tempos and how to contract different muscles, do different movement patterns, understanding how to strength progress from a competitive standpoint to get you as strong as possible, learning conditioning from different implements of conditioning and strength put together. And that again made me be a better coach and help me be a better programmer for athletes in general. And then so I was like, okay, what do I do now? I opened up 2 gyms in Port St. Lucie and Stuart, Florida, but I wanted to still work in the sport that I love, which is MMA. So I called Dean. I said, man, do you have anybody you could, that you need me to work with down there? And this is when he got the full-time job at Coconut Creek. And so he was like, you may be in luck, because Brian, the old strength and conditioning coach, was actually leaving. So he said, can you get your resume together? I said, yeah, no problem. I ran down there, and the first day I trained Dustin Poirier, Tisha Torres, Hector Lombard, Dia Davis.
That guy's jacked, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was interesting and fun, and they actually, they took to the training. They liked what I did, liked how I coached. I stuck there for about 2 months and then got the full-time job. So now, rest is history. That's been about 4 years.
So you have all these high-level athletes, because ATT was 3 years in a row winning the best gym of the year. You have so many different athletes. So far, at least from what I know, like Tisha, Joanna, Dustin are more primarily stand-up fighters. But like you've had, even including myself, that are just, some people are overall MMA fighters, or just strikers, or more Khabib style, where they want to go for wrestling, go for takedowns, or you even have a lot of Brazilians here, nothing but jiu-jitsu. Do you, for at least the higher level guys like Dustin, do you go sport specific and go, hey, I know this is your style, but this is the type of fight you're gonna have? For example, Dustin facing Khabib coming up, it's more than likely gonna be a wrestling match. Yeah,
so generally we like to take an approach of like getting them physically fit and ready to do their skills training, right? So I have to make sure that I'm not getting too far on the long lines of specificity. Come on in.
What's up, Richie?
You can't not come in.
Is this a podcast?
This is a podcast, sir.
I don't want to be on no podcast. I'll catch you when you're done with it.
All right. It's Shorty's podcast, by the way.
Wait.
Hello.
Shorty's podcast? All right, shorten it up.
All right, come on. All right.
When you're done.
Yeah, I got you. So I mean, with that, we want to make sure that we're...
That's in the business plan.
We want to make sure we're organizing things appropriately. And then, I will alter the training depending upon who they're actually going against. Like, let's say for Dustin and Khabib, it's totally different from a Max Holloway fight, right? So we do want to make sure that he's strong in different positions, especially from a grappling perspective. So static, strength, isometrics are going to be a key factor when we're going and preparing for the fight. But again, I still want to work on those general movement qualities so that we can enhance the overall athleticism of the individual so that it can correlate into being a better fighter.
So I'm big on weight cutting. We know the 9 days, 26 pounds. I think 15 days after that to make 20 days, another 28 pounds, 54 pounds, like 45 days, which sucks. But when you have guys cutting weight as well, how does that work when it comes to strength and conditioning side? When you know their weight is coming down, do you taper the workouts off a little bit, or do you manipulate it?
Yeah, so every day is auto-regulation, right? So every day I have to have a plan B no matter what, especially because this sport is so multifaceted and there's so many things going on each day, right? So, if somebody comes into me, and most of the time, I have to auto-regulate. And basically mean I have to call an audible. I have to switch things up on the fly because nothing is a perfect world, you know what I mean? And at the end of the day, they're going to come in with bumps and bruises. They're going to come in a little tired because there's so many training, there's so many trainings going on throughout the day and throughout the weeks. What I do is I'll taper the volume off, and we'll make sure that we're still getting some type of stimulus adaptation depicted upon our specific goal. but we don't overdo it to where they're going to overtrain themselves, right? So I'm always constantly, managing their fatigue through objective and subjective indicators, whether that be an HRV monitor, whether that be just kind of asking them questions and seeing their movements, seeing if they have the proper coordination that they usually do. And those little indicators will kind of dictate what I do in that training session. And we do it every day. So it's not just like one specific week. Sometimes I have a structured deload depending on, on how long they've been in camp. Just because I know that at a certain point in time in camp, the skills training, the tactical, technical training is going to pick up, especially in the intensities because of sparring and things like that. So we taper off of the strength and conditioning to a degree, but we still make sure that we're getting the most out of what we need for that time frame.
I guess this is a typical question, but a lot of people are very prideful. Again, like yourself, you're like, oh, I'm still going to fight. I don't care what the doctor says. People are like, maybe you just take you're done. As a fighter and just as a coach now, mainly as a coach now, looking from the outside point of view, not having your personal pride in it, have you told fighters like, hey, relax, take the day off, take a couple of days off, take the week off? Is that okay? Because a lot of people, mainly amateurs coming up, we're prideful as hell. I don't care what you tell me, I'm still going to work. And then it's only Wednesday and you're dead.
Yeah. And that's the major thing, man, is having to actually pull you guys back. Because you do work hard, extra hard, and that's just a mindset. And it's a good mindset to have. And it's up to the coaches to actually relay that over to the athlete so that the athlete doesn't feel bad for not making the training session. No. And that comes from understanding, that comes from communication and then reading your athletes, right? That's what we call the art of coaching. So again, you have to have the science-based approach, and you also have to have that art of coaching to where you can actually read and communicate with the athlete. So yeah, I mean, it is important. And a lot of times, like I said, I do have to pull them back, and it's not something that we have to do as far as like, okay, totally take the break, don't do anything. There may be something that you could do that's not going to, hinder progression.
No, because you've had us doing yoga sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we're doing yoga, we're doing stretching instead of just going.
Yeah, and it's still a progression there. Even if you're doing some type of like soft tissue work, going to get a massage, you're still actually training, but you're training for recovery. You see what I mean? So the training process is still going on, but you have to think of it like that as opposed to you're resting. You know what I mean? Even if you're resting, you're somewhat training because you're training the ability to recover.
And then last thing, so you started at what, 210 you said? 210, 220?
Yeah.
Did you ever make 155?
Yeah, I fought at 155 my entire professional career.
Now looking at fighters trying to do the same, do you recommend people do that extreme weight cut to try to get down, or would you have preferred to stay at 170 regardless of what your opponent's size was?
Well, I believe, like, for me, I'm not as tall as the other 170 pounders, right? I'm 5'8", you know what I mean? Limbs are short. You look at Dustin is a big kid. People really don't know that. And I tell this to everybody that I see. It's like, they ask me, can you make 145 again? Hell no. The kid is, like, his limbs are big. Yeah. Like, his bone structure is very thick. So it really depends on that.
Getting older, metabolism's possibly
for sure. Yeah, definitely. I think honestly, I think if anything, he's growing into his body. So his muscle, like his muscle maturity, is getting up there. He's 30 years old now, so muscle maturity is there. His testosterone is there. I would say at the end of the day, there's no possible way he might even have to move up to 170. This is just Dustin. For me, I could make 155, but I would have to obviously walk around about 178, 176, which I did. And I actually did for a while. Now, was I the strongest I could be? Probably not. Now, I could fight at 170. I could fight at 185. But obviously, I'm always going to be the smaller guy. That's the issue that you have with fighters, because they don't ever want to be the smaller guy. So they think they're going to have a tactical advantage or just a physical advantage doing a larger weight cut. But the case is, if you look at all the successful fighters right now, like Daru Strong, with Dustin, even Joanna going up to 125, I like that better for her because she doesn't have to kill herself to, suck herself down to make that weight, and performance isn't going to be lacking at that point. So, in my opinion, yes, I would like to see more fighters actually fight in the weight class that is really structured for them from a
more manage your weight to a healthy style.
Yeah.
And if you have to do a cut, it's that week instead of weeks in advance. Try. Yeah. I do that all the time. But and that's Dustin was talking about. I want to fight Nate Diaz at 165. He's like, that's my perfect weight class.
It is.
You know, and that's like my promotion now has 165, which is huge. Everyone's like, all right, we're just moving down 5 pounds because that's what we want to do. 170 is too big. Again, I'm small. The length is huge, but if you look at examples like Frank Edgar, was more successful at 155 than he's ever been at 145, and he's even like, I can bump down to 35.
He could. Yeah.
Can he? But does it mean he should?
Yeah, I mean, well, Frankie's a different story, man, because Frankie's definitely been in the game for a long time, you know, and I think that he's at a level where he can kind of do whatever he feels like he needs to do to be successful. But at that point, I worked with Frankie before, and honestly, man, he walks around at probably like 162 to 165 pounds. So for him, you know, 155 would be a very good, easy weight cut. He could just walk in there and do it. There's no...
Yeah, he weighs like 160 naturally.
As long as he feels comfortable with the weight, you know, and he's actually in, like, I usually say about 6 weeks out is a good training, like, weight.
Yeah.
And if you can manage that and that's how you feel comfortable, then that's probably the weight that you want to fight at. You know what I mean? But again, people will go 6 weeks out and they still have to cut like 30 pounds. You know what I mean? So it's not a good look.
Yeah, I get fat. And I think that's the biggest thing for your side. I know you're not more on the dietitian side, but I know you collaborate with a handful of guys.
Yeah.
And that's the big thing with my nutritionist as well. Is like, dude, manage your weight. 15 to 20 pounds. You know, don't go anything more because now you're cutting weight instead of being healthy and then having to cut those few pounds last week of. And I know in college, my coach used to tell me, if you're more focused on making weight, then what are you doing wrestling? Bump up, you should be at a different weight class.
For sure, yeah. That's the thing, is a lot of people get like either nervous or whatever, and it negatively affects the training process. And Dustin used to tell me this too. He used to dread coming into training because at the end of the day, he knew he had to cut that amount of weight, like that much amount of weight. So now he's liking training. He doesn't have to worry about his weight. Doesn't have to diet so crazy. And he's keeping a healthy eating habit. You know what I mean? Where
he's
a lot
enjoying
of times,
practice too.
Yeah, enjoying it, and that's the goal. Like, as long as you want to stay in this sport, you gotta enjoy it. You gotta enjoy the grind. And if you're like constantly thinking about your weight and the weight cut, it's not gonna be as enjoyable.
So what's your ultimate goal in this field?
To be honest, is to go down as the best strength and conditioning coach in combat sports history. You know, and I aim high because that's just my mentality. You know, as a fighter, I wanted to be the best fighter. I want to be the best coach. In this sport, in all sports in combat sports, performance is more along the lines of, these are my types of people. You know what I mean? This is my type of sport. This is my type of environment. You know, so this is why I was drawn to that. And because I was a fighter and because I've been in this sport for a good amount of time, you know, I'm able to correlate a lot of the stuff from a science-based approach and then make it practical for the athletes, for the fighters to be successful. So at the end of the day, I want to be known as the greatest one to come and coach you guys up.
And I think that the biggest thing is you can connect with us because you're not just some strength and conditioning coach that goes, cool, I've worked with football players, but now I'm coming into MMA. You've done MMA, you know the things possibly that you needed to work on or should have worked on back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
And if you would have continued it, this is probably what I would have, should have done.
Man, I say it all the time, man. If I knew what I knew then, back when I was fighting, I'd be way better. But, you know.
What's something, because that's one of my episodes too, is I talk about, like, if you were able to go back in time and tell your, you know, beginning MMA self something, what's something you would have changed back in the day? What's something you think would have been important then that would have made you that much better now?
For sure, a lot. Well, definitely, I would say be patient. You know, be patient. I was definitely.
That's the hard part.
yeah. And that's the young person in you, man. You want it now a lot of times, and I was too impatient and I went pro too early. You know, and I had holes in my game that got, you know, obviously, you know,
just exposed.
It really exposed. Like in the first fight, I fought Kurt Hollabaugh, who just fought Thiago Moises, and I fought him in his hometown. I was the main event. In my first pro fight, I was the main event, and you know, did well on the feet.
Setup.
Yeah, it was a setup, and he was like 12-0 and had 2 belts and stuff.
That's a
Hometown
setup. I don't
hero.
know why you took that fight now.
Dean Thomas.
Yeah,
Dean Thomas.
He's like,
you got it though. He's like,
I know you're not watching this, but still, dude.
I wish he was here. He just left, by the way. But yeah, he was like, he's a tough kid. But I had a good amateur career. Like I was undefeated. I had just beat a Duke wrestler, like a Division I Duke wrestler. Put him to sleep in his hometown. So I was used to that. I was used to fighting in hometowns, you know, other people's hometown. But it was just like there was holes in my game that I just really should have plugged in before I turned pro. And what ended up happening was, you know, I did good on my feet, took him down, and then he was elbowing from the bottom. So I'm like, oh, man, shit. Like, not used to these elbows. Put my hands on the mat, he swung over, got the arm bar. So it was that that stupid of a mistake
Yeah.
that cost me my first pro fight, and it's just kind of stupid mistakes down the line where I could have been, if I would have been patient, got more time in the cage, especially from an amateur perspective, because when I fought as an amateur, there was no shin pads, there was none of that, you know, and I fought in Louisiana mostly where, man, like the gloves weren't even regulation, you know what I'm saying? So, and there was like knees and things like that. Nowadays, these kids are like padded up to the gills, so. But for now, like I was like, man, I'm already kind of fighting pro. I'm just not getting paid.
Yeah.
So my patience wasn't there, and that's one thing that I would say. As far as like training wise, I trained hard. I trained a lot. Trained very frequently. I used to do 4 day a week or 4 day sessions. You know, and one thing I would say is kind of minimize the sessions a little bit more and optimize the training. Right. So training optimally instead of maximally. And also making sure that I'm not running myself into the ground, you know, because I overtrained pretty hard there.
Well, that's actually, it's funny. I'm starting to learn that now. Like when we talk about pride and you telling people like, hey, maybe you should take a break. Conan, when I first got here, was like, hey, you have 10 weeks into your fight. What are you doing sparring? I'm like, oh, I just want to help. He goes, no, you go back to your room.
Yeah.
And you go watch from the balcony. And I'm like, put my hand on the window. I'm like, yeah, I want to spar. But it made sense.
Yeah.
And now when I come back, like I might be a few weeks from my fight, I'm taking Wednesdays off. Because I know Monday and Tuesday I'm going really, really hard. I'm taking Wednesday off, but when I take Wednesday off, I'm doing an active recovery. I'm doing a run, I sauna, I stretch, and then Thursday, Friday I go hard. Saturday is kind of like that one workout, so it's like I'm just pushing through. Sunday relax and just repeat. And that's something I'm trying to really implement, because it's hard to do, but it's also in my head to go, it's okay to relax.
Yeah, I know, bro. I still go through it today. I still do it. You know, even now being, you know, I power lift, I go to jiu-jitsu, I train, but then when I'm like, oh man, I really don't want to miss this training session, but I know I need to because my body needs to rest, or I need to focus on other things outside of just training. And dude, it's still with me. It's still always going to be with you, but you need to be smart enough to know that you're not doing the wrong thing by resting and recovering or doing some type of active recovery. Again, just think about it as another form of training, you know?
And that's a huge thing. But guys, if you're interested in any of this stuff, he does have a YouTube, if you want to shout it out, and an Instagram slowly coming back up.
I know. So I got shut down from UFC again, second time, from a 2017 post, but we'll be back up on there. It's at Darustrong. You can also follow me on Twitter at Darustrong. My website is darustrong.com, very easy. And then for my YouTube, Phil Daru Strong, you can type in that search, and I have plenty of videos out there. We're putting out constant content each and every day, pretty much. And then also have an archive section where I go over podcasts like this, and I also have my own podcast, Fight Strength Podcast. So you can check that out on iTunes and Stitcher and all that stuff. So
as long as Dean Thompson's not on it, check it out. But yeah, man, it's a crazy thing in this sport. Again, I didn't want to ask you the simple questions of like, oh, do you believe strength conditioning is great, this, that, yada, yada, yada. But it's from a personal perspective, that's something I do respect a lot about you, is that you've done the sport and you're coming in and going, this is what I believe can help you, or scientifically, this is what will help you if you actually do it.
Yeah. A lot of times, man, you get guys that come from a science background or have like a sports science like look upon things. And they don't really know the sport. They don't know the athletes in the sport. And that's where I can kind of bridge the gap there, is where I take that science approach and I get that practical application. We put it together. The great thing is that I converse with PhDs and master degree students, and these guys come to me and ask me for these types of questions because I'm always on the field. I'm always on the floor. And
The best ever experience.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. And when these kids come in, they intern, I'm like, listen, whatever you learned in school, throw it out the window right now, because right now you have to be able to coach an individual that you never even understood what their mindset is going
And everyone's different. That's the crazy thing.
Yeah, and for the most part, a lot of these kids don't really know fighters, right? Some of them do. Some of them actually come from a fighting background, which is cool. I like to see that. Guys are actually fighting and then getting a degree and then going into coaching, which is awesome. This is like 101 for me. You know what I mean? And that's something that I always tell the athletes or the coaches that want to become, coaches in this sport, is that you need to know the sport. You need to train. The great thing about this sport is that you can actually train this sport. You can do jiu-jitsu, you can do kickboxing, you can hit the pads, and you can't really do that with like NFL or going in the NHL. Like you can't, you know what I mean? You're not going to play on an NHL team. but you can actually train with somebody like yourself. You know what I'm saying? Just holding the pads and feeling you grapple against them, like
haymakers all day.
yeah, put it
These are my stuff.
But like when you get put in those grappling positions, like you need to know what muscles activate, how's it feel from an isometric standpoint, where the force is being distributed out, you know, and that's really going to help you understand how to, you know, put together a solid program that's going to enhance the capabilities to be strong in those unorthodox positions. You know.
Guys, again, check out his page. I'll leave everything in the description below. And if you need anything from me, obviously leave in the comments. Anything from him, message him on his YouTube or leave comments in his videos. And I appreciate it. This was another episode of Inside Team Shorty.